Imagine living on a planet that's colder than Antarctica, has less air than Mount Everest, and is more radioactive than Chernobyl. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, it is. Mars is a barren wasteland of a planet, and it seems like everything on it is designed to kill us. But we still want to go there. That's exactly what NASA and SpaceX intend to do. They want to colonize Mars. But how and why? Let's find out. But before that, let me ask you a simple question. Would you leave Earth and live on Mars with a colony for the rest of your life? That's a tough question. Now let's move on. First of all, let's be realistic. Mars is a terrible option, but it's still the best option we have besides the clouds of Venus. But why do we want to do that? Well, we just want to ensure the survival of humanity in case of a global catastrophe on Earth, such as nuclear war, a pandemic, or a giant asteroid impact. Also, we want to advance our scientific knowledge and exploration of the solar system, discover the origin of life, or maybe find a better second option besides Mars. Sounds great, but colonizing Mars is not a walk in the park. Yes, we've been sending robots and satellites there for decades, but that's not enough. Colonizing Mars is one of the most crazy and complex things that humans have ever attempted to do. It's like trying to build a house on the bottom of the ocean, but worse, much worse. There are so many problems and dangers that can ruin the whole plan. Let's see what they are. First, Mars is very far away from Earth. How far? Well, imagine driving a car at 100 kilometers per hour or 60 miles per hour non-stop. It would take you more than 500 years to reach Mars. Of course, rockets are much faster than cars, but they still take 6 to 9 months to travel from Earth to Mars. That's like spending a whole school year in a tiny metal box with no windows, no fresh air, no plants, no animals, and no Netflix. Just you and a few other bored and cranky astronauts. And don't forget the radiation, the space debris, and the possibility of something breaking down along the way. Secondly, landing on Mars is not a walk in the park. It's more like a plunge into hell. Mars has a very thin atmosphere, which means it doesn't slow you down much when you enter it at high speeds. It also means that parachutes and airbags don't work very well on Mars. So you need to use rockets, heat shields, and other fancy gadgets to slow down from 20,000 kilometers per hour to zero in just a few minutes. This is what NASA calls the 7 minutes of terror, because if anything goes wrong, you're on your own, and more than likely, you're toast. Another point is, living on Mars is not a picnic. It's more like a nightmare. Mars is a very cold and dry place, with temperatures ranging from minus 143 degrees Celsius at night to minus 63 degrees Celsius during the day. Mars also has very low air pressure, which means you can't breathe without a spacesuit or a pressurized habitat. And even if you could breathe, you wouldn't want to inhale the Martian soil, which is toxic and contains chemicals that can harm humans and plants. Mars also has a slightly longer day than Earth, which can mess up your sleep cycle and make you feel jet-lagged all the time. And last but not least, Mars has no magnetic field or ozone layer to protect you from the harmful solar and cosmic radiation that can damage your cells and cause cancer. So how are NASA and SpaceX going to overcome these challenges and colonize Mars? Well, they have different plans and timelines for how to get there and what to do once they arrive. Let's take a look at what they have in mind. NASA's plan for going to Mars is the Mars Exploration Program, which is an umbrella term for all of NASA's missions and activities relating to exploring Mars, including robotic and human missions. And the famous Artemis program is related to this exploration program. Let's give more details. The Artemis program is named after the Greek goddess of the moon and the twin sister of Apollo, which was the name of the first moon landing program. Very creative. With this program, NASA wants to send the first woman and the next man to the moon by 2024, and use the moon as a training ground for Mars missions in the 2030s. Because nothing prepares you for living on a barren desert than living on a barren rock satellite. NASA will use the Orion spacecraft and Space Launch System rocket, which are the biggest and most powerful currently in development by NASA, to send astronauts to lunar orbit and then to the lunar surface using a lunar lander. NASA will also build a lunar outpost called the Gateway, which will be like a mini space station around the moon where astronauts can hang out and prepare for Mars trips. The Mars exploration program has some big goals and 3 phases. The goals are discovering the history of life on Mars, understanding the climate, studying geology, and preparing for human exploration of Mars. Some of the scientific discoveries and achievements that the program has made are finding evidence of ancient water flows, identifying minerals that formed in water, detecting methane in the atmosphere, studying the Martian weather and climate, mapping the surface and subsurface features, and more. But what about the phases of the journey to Mars? Let me explain. The first phase is Earth-reliant, where we use the International Space Station as a giant floating lab in space. There we learn how to live and work in space for long periods of time and how to survive and thrive on Mars. The second one is Proving Ground, where we venture beyond low Earth orbit and explore the space around the Moon. There we use the Gateway and the Orion spacecraft as stepping stones to Mars. The Gateway is a small outpost that orbits the Moon and serves as a gateway to deep space. The Orion is a crewed capsule that can dock with the Gateway and take us to different destinations in cislunar space. And the final phase is Earth independent, where we finally go to Mars. There we use an interplanetary transport system called the Deep Space Transport as a vehicle to take us there. The DST is powered by both solar, electric, and chemical propulsion and carries a crew of 4. It also uses the Gateway as a staging area for landing missions. We orbit and land on Mars and start exploring the Red Planet. NASA's ultimate goal is to establish a permanent human presence on Mars, which will require sending more people and stuff, building houses and roads, and making use of local resources. So that's NASA's plan for going to Mars, but what about SpaceX? How do they plan to do it? Well, let me tell you, they have a very different approach, and by different, I mean crazy. SpaceX founder and CEO Elon Musk, well, there's no need to introduce him at this point. Elon has a grand vision for making humans a multi-planetary species and ensuring our survival by colonizing Mars. He also has a very tight schedule for achieving it. He wants to send the first humans to Mars in the mid-2020s and eventually build a city of 1 million people on Mars by the end of the century. That's right, 1 million people living on another planet in our lifetime. How crazy is that? SpaceX's plan relies on its Starship and Super Heavy rocket, which are currently under development and testing. The Starship is a reusable spacecraft that can carry up to 100 people or 100 tons of cargo to low Earth orbit, the Moon, Mars, or beyond. The Super Heavy is a reusable booster that can lift the Starship to orbit. Together they form the Starship system, which Musk claims will be the most powerful and cost-effective launch system ever built. SpaceX's vision for sending humans to Mars involves launching multiple Starships to orbit, where they will be refueled by tanker Starships. Then they will depart for Mars when the 2 planets are closest to each other, which happens every 26 months. The trip will take about 6 months, during which the crew will live in the Starship's spacious cabin, which will have amenities such as windows, entertainment systems, and exercise equipment. The Starship will land vertically on Mars using its engines and heat shield, and then serve as a habitat for the crew. SpaceX's ultimate goal is to create a self-sustaining civilization on Mars, which will require sending thousands of Starships with millions of people and tons of cargo over many decades. But how do we separate fact from fiction when it comes to SpaceX? There's so much misinformation floating around. For example, you may have heard that SpaceX wants to terraform Mars by nuking its poles. Sounds cool, but not so fast, because there are a few problems with that idea. SpaceX has not officially announced any plans to terraform Mars, and Elon Musk has only mentioned the idea of detonating nuclear bombs at the poles as a hypothetical scenario in an interview. He's not explained how this would work or what the consequences would be. Maybe he was just kidding around. Or maybe he was bored of Earth and wanted some excitement. Who knows? Also, there's no scientific consensus that terraforming Mars is feasible or desirable, and there are many technical and ethical challenges involved. Some of the methods that have been proposed, such as releasing greenhouse gases, deploying orbital mirrors, or detonating nuclear bombs, could have unintended and irreversible effects on the Martian environment, and any potential life forms that may exist there. Do we really want to mess up another planet after we messed up our own? Right now, SpaceX's ultimate goal is to create a self-sustaining civilization on Mars, but this does not necessarily imply terraforming the planet. SpaceX may instead rely on building habitats and infrastructure on Mars using local materials and technologies, such as producing propellant from Martian water and carbon dioxide. As you can see, both NASA and SpaceX have bold and exciting plans to colonize Mars, but they also face many challenges and risks along the way. Will they succeed? Will they cooperate or compete? Will they encounter life on Mars? These are some of the questions that keep us awake at night. Well, maybe not, but they're still interesting to think about. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to get notified of our future videos. These things might sound repetitive, but they're really important for the growth of the channel. Thank you again, and by the way, if you're interested in seeing a 2.5 million mile high tsunami on a star, check out this amazing video. See you next time.